How you doing, guys? It's your boy Nando and Jermaine for the Pound for Pound Boxing Show. Today, we've got two very special guests, undisputed guests. It's Jessica McCaskill and her trainer, Rick Ramos. How you doing, guys?
Good. How are you?
Very well. Thank you. Just want to say thank you for taking your time to speak to us today. Rick, we were expecting you. We were hoping Jessica would come on. So I want to thank you for organizing that for us and Jessica taking your time to speak to us today.
Yeah, no problem.
No problem at all.
How's things going? How's training? Are you in camp yet? Any news for your next fight?
We're always training, so every day, every week, we have special things that we're working on, and whether there's a fight coming up or not, we're staying active. We're staying in the gym. It's very important. It's very important to be that role model so that the other fighters in the gym don't take too much time off. A lot of our fighters in the gym have fights coming up, so we're going to be doing a lot of traveling for them. I did my thing earlier this year, and now kind of pass the baton to the rest of the team to get the job done.
Let's go back to that night when let's go back to the first fight with Cecilia Breakers. I just sum up for our fans the feeling when you heard David Diamante say, and now the undisputed champion of the world, Jessica McCaskill. What was that feeling when you heard that?
It was very special, a very unique night for us. We came in as the underdog, as we do for most of our fights, and there was just a lot of, with COVID and everything going on, there was just a lot of team time, a lot of, building amongst ourselves, and so it just really felt like it was me and Rick out there. And, no matter what happened, it was just going to be us, win, lose, or draw. And we got the win. And it was like a very bonding moment, very exciting for us because we had been through so much, and we take a lot of like crap from people. And, they want us to do one thing and then we do it our way, or they want us to win a certain way, or they expect us to lose and then we win anyway. So, we always have a lot of people that are kind of against us. And so it's just kind of us against the world. So it was good to bring that win home.
I wanted to touch up on that, what you just said about, you guys taking a lot of crap from a lot of people, because surprisingly, there were people, against you guys after this fight, and even Cecilia turning around saying it was an off night. I will beat her the next time. People were making excuses for her. What I want to know is sum up the feeling of the rematch, proving everyone wrong and still being undisputed and proving that you were the better person that night, the better fighter.
I mean, unfortunately, it was a little annoying because it was like, they said, hey, we're going to have this 4-woman tournament and whoever wins is, going to fight each other. And then that seemed to disappear after I won the first fight. And then, I win and everybody says, it just seemed like it wasn't good enough. And I had to show them again. I had to prove it again. All these excuses came up after Cecilia said no excuses. And then she was the only person making excuses. So it just seemed like, everybody wants me to do it twice to make it really count, or to work harder to prove myself. And so it was a little annoying, but, of course, we're happy for the win and we're happy to move on from that.
Coach, I want to ask you as well. I've interviewed a few world champions before, but Jessica's the first undisputed I've ever interviewed. But I've never asked a coach himself, sum up your feeling when not your fighter winning a world title. First of all, just winning a world title, but aiming that, that ultimate goal.
I think, like me personally, like it was amazing. Like I always thought, like, you know what, I'll be proud. I promote myself more after I win a world title. Now we won 8 world titles, so yeah. I definitely, it's definitely a phenomenal feeling because you want to be like on a world class level as a coach. But to be honest with you, it's like once you win 1, you're like, man, now I need 2. And once you win 2, you're like, now I want 3, and then after so on and so forth. And now I need another world champion because I feel like, it's really odd because in a lot of ways I feel like I haven't accomplished anything until I get another world champion. And I feel like the boxing public is not seeing me as a world-class coach until I get another world champion. So it's a constant chasing. It's a constant like grind of trying to, to beat the last thing you did. So it's good, but you can't rest with 1 world title because you're just a 1 world title coach. You could, right now, a lot of people are like, oh, Rick and Jessica are one-hit wonders, even though we beat, everyone to get all these world titles. So it's crazy. I don't really understand the logic when they think about us per se, but we're just going to keep beating everyone. That's all we can do is just keep beating everyone. I think Jessica should be in the Hall of Fame already with her stats. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but Jessica has more world titles than Katie Taylor. So she's won more world titles than Katie Taylor. So I don't think we get the credit that, that she doesn't get the credit that she deserves. And I don't think we as a team get the credit that we deserve, but we just got to keep working and not focus on the negative people.
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned about world titles. A fighter who's got a world title, the IBF super lightweight title, is Mary McGee. She's been very vocal recently, coming at you two regarding a matchup with Jessica. Could you see this fight ever materializing between Jessica and Mary sometime?
Yeah, I think I'm in full control of that. The fight will happen when I want it to happen, and Mary McGee is someone who lives down the street from us. So she can stay on hold until she does something worse. I mean, she has one world title. One. We have 8. She's not even on my topic of discussion. She needs to do more. She needs to beat someone who's relative. Like, the people she fought is old and washed up. So she needs to beat someone who's relative, and then I can talk about her again.
Honestly, there's so many people that are calling us out. And, there have been people that we've wanted to fight in the past, when before I had world titles and they weren't interested. And, of course, when you win, then everybody's like, oh, well, I can beat that person. It's like, you didn't want to fight back in the day. Why would you even want to, come at me now? You just want money, or you just want, your big payday. And, we're looking for big fights that actually mean something against people who are actually doing things and people that can help make history and help raise the bar for women's boxing. We want to make sure the money's up high. We want to make sure the competition's high.
I mean, fighting Mary McGee, she's not a huge ticket. She's not even a ticket seller outside of Gary, Indiana. I mean, she's just no one knows who she is out in the boxing public. And until she changes that, she has to wait for my phone call. That's it. End of story.
What I would like to know, sorry, Jermaine, go on.
One question I would like to ask, obviously, if Mary McGee was to fight someone like a Chantel Cameron and become a unified champion, would you then think about that fight?
Of course. Listen, she's got to do something. She hasn't done anything. She got one belt it was vacant. So, end of discussion. There's nothing to talk about, or she has to do more. Chantel Cameron has to do more to fight Jessica. She's only got one belt too. Listen, everybody needs to do more. Yeah, let's talk about 140, okay? Chantel Cameron won vacant. Jessica's vacant WBC belt. The other girl won the vacant WBA belt. So, you guys got to do something at 140 to even. You're not even in our weight class calling us out. You see what I'm saying? You haven't even fought at 147 and won a belt. So, these conversations to me are silly. We had to go do all this stuff. Cecilia called us out. We went up and beat her. We did what we had to do. You guys got. I just think everybody's lazy. You can't call us out when you're just lazy and you just want to fight once. We fight Mary McGee. That's her biggest payday of her career. I know that. She knows that. Those girls got to do more. Work harder. That's all I can say. Win more belts.
What I want to know is how do you stay level in a sense of calm when people call you out and you get Twitter trolls and people online? Because I've seen fighters. And I'll name some of them, like Clarissa Shields, take the bait and, bite back online, and even certain coaches. So I want to know how you both stay on that level of just, keeping quiet and letting your work do the talking.
Here's the thing. I speak the truth. I speak hardcore. We wanted a Chantel Cameron fight 2 years ago. They didn't want it. We tried to support Mary McGee. She slapped us in the face by disrespecting us publicly. So I bring those stories up and people get offended because I tell the truth. These other people, they just talk shit. Hey, I want to fight you. That's not how it works. When we called out Clarissa Shields, we invited her to 147. We didn't disrespect her. We just said, come to 147. We fight. We got all the belts. So you need us. We don't need you. See what I'm saying? So when we called out Katie Taylor, we went at Katie Taylor. Katie Taylor said back in the day, hey, nobody wants to fight me. We called 20 girls. I said, well, you didn't call me because we take that fight. So they called me. We took the fight. So I'm very, very clear and very, very clean and very, very factual when I talk. These other people just say random shit, hopefully, and the shit sticks to the wall. So for me, to answer your question, like, it doesn't get under my skin. They're just like they're like begging for fights. So for me, it's like, until you come with facts, just because you called us out for 2 years, you know, you haven't done anything. You won a vacant title. You only have one belt. Like, that's not enough. We did everything we did. We won 8 world titles, you know, so we want the big names. We want the Katie rematch. We want a possible Serrano fight. We want a possible Clarissa, possible Chris Cyborg. We want big names. And until you are a big name, then don't even talk about us. Or you could talk, I'm just not paying attention.
It's funny you mentioned Serrano. The Zone put out an article last month calling for Jessica to face Amanda Serrano. Mm-hmm. Is that a fight you're really interested in, maybe next or down the line?
I mean, I'm interested in that fight. I don't think they're interested in that fight. I think she's gonna stay small, 126, try to be undisputed there. She'll come up to 135, cash out against Katie Taylor. You know, and that's not talking smack. I don't think she could beat Katie Taylor. And, you know, I think that she'll stay at 135, the highest, but I think she cashes out at 135. Meaning like she'll end her career at 135, and that would be against Katie. If she loses, she goes back to New York and does a goodbye fight, and that's it. I mean, I know that. I mean, that's this, you know, everyone could, you know, go back and forth to MMA and say that there's money in MMA, but they're not making no money over there. So I just think, like, factually, it's just like, you should hear, like, I can't even tell you the truth, because, like, I can't even tell you the whole stories, because the things that people call me with, like promoters, even other fighters, some of the fighters you mentioned call me directly and like, hey, help me with this, help me with that. What do you think about this? I can't even talk about it because it's embarrassing to them. But I will say that there's a lot of people out there that are not as smart as you think they are. Let's just say that. And I think that when I bring up certain topics or whatever, they get really upset at me because they know the real conversations that we had off the record. They know the conversations that we had on the phone, online, in person, at the boxing matches. I just feel like no one's really honest. I really don't. Like, all this fake talk, like on the internet, hey, we support you, or this or that. It's just all fake. And everyone's full of shit. It's crazy how full of shit boxing people are. It's crazy to me. And the more and more I talk about it, the less and less the more and more these fighters get mad, because they know exactly what I'm talking about. That's why I feel like I give interviews and I give the truth, and you guys will share this and your fucking views will skyrocket because I'm telling the truth. These other clowns, they don't tell the truth. They just don't tell the truth. All these other fighters, promoters, managers. I mean, it's just crazy. You should see some of these contracts these promoters put on fighters, because these fighters all call me, Rick, how do I get out of a contract? Some of the marquee names that you mentioned call me and say, hey, how do I get out of this contract? How the fuck is Jessica making, 80% of her purse, and blah, blah, blah. How is she doing this, and blah. These guys sign such bad deals. I can just go on and on and on. It's just, boxing is in turmoil right now. And it has everything to do with it. Don't forget, at the end of the day, you fighters sign these shitty contracts, and they were so excited about turning pro or signing with the big name promoter, and they sign these shitty deals. And it's crazy, and it's heartbreaking for me to watch, but they have to beg for these fights because the people that they're with can't even get them a fight. It's crazy. I can go on and on and on, but I won't.
I hope you're right about the subscribers and views, Rick.
For sure.
Yeah, obviously you mentioned Katie Taylor and Serrano, the fights. Would you be willing to come over to the UK to make that Katie Taylor fight happen if it was a possibility?
Listen, for the record, we go to Ireland for the right money. We go to Ireland, wherever, like, the money's got to be right. I have a price in my head for what Ireland's worth, and I have a price in my head for what London's worth. Now, if you can hit those prices, we'll go anywhere. Like, there's a price for everything, right? I mean, I can get you to do something for the right price, right? Absolutely, right? So we can do something for the right price too. I'm looking for out for Jessica's career and her livelihood after boxing. We can go anywhere, but the price has got to be right. The weight's got to be right. The price has got to be right. The right ounce gloves got to be right. It's all got to be right.
Jessica, I wanted to ask you personally. Rick mentioned Chris Cyborg. Now, obviously, there's a lot of criticism right now in boxing for these YouTubers to come into boxing, but Chris is a real fighter, and that will be a great fight. What's your thoughts if this fight ever happened?
Well, we've talked about a crossover fight for a while. Like, mentioned that we want to continue to make history in boxing, and I don't think boxing has had a proper crossover fight quite yet, and I want to be the one to do it. So I don't know if Chris could pass all the drug tests that are involved, or if she could make the proper weight, but that's something to look for. In our future. That's something that we've talked about. That's something that we put out there publicly multiple times, and so hopefully it happens.
Brilliant. A question I want to ask is, obviously there's been talk recently in the media and all over here about women's boxing being 3-minute rounds. What do you guys make of that?
That's an easy question, and again, this is what I'm about to say is basic business logic. Okay. And this is where fighters are like, well, Rick don't know what he's talking about, but this is business. So most of you fighters don't know what I'm talking about. So the pool of female fighters, like I have a female fighter who's 9. This is just, I'm using my own fighter as an example. She's 4-0. She's ranked like number 3 in the United States. That just tells you how little the pool is of fighters, right? My point to that is, if you start doing 3-minute rounds, what happens? More knockouts, more injuries, more suspensions, more layoffs. There isn't enough female fighters right now to do 3-minute rounds. And I think that if you women are complaining that you're not fighting a lot now, if there's more suspensions, more knockouts, more injuries with 3-minute rounds, you're going to fight maybe once every year and a half. It is not, we're not there yet. We're just not there yet from a business standpoint. And I think the smart promoters, guys like Eddie Hearn, would agree with that. And anyone else outside of that, if they don't agree with that, then they're obviously not successful promoters. But you know how hard it is to get a female fight, like a journeyman female, to fight one of my girls? I have to call 20 people to finally get one. And it's if all those girls are injured or suspended or whatever, it's going to take longer and much more money to get someone to commit. So the 2-3-minute rounds to me is not even a conversation until there's 80, 50, let's just say realistically 60 to 80 fighters deep per weight class. Because right now, I mean, if you let's look at the welterweight division, right? Just look at go on BoxRec, look at the welterweight division, and every female except for 2 in the top 20 are under 30 years old. So that just tells you, like, most of those women are like 34 and older. I mean, there's not enough women there. There's just not. And the older they get, it's a little bit more difficult to make weight. It's a little bit, they're more injury prone. So it's just like, we're not there yet. At least another 4 years before we can go 3-minute rounds. And the second they start doing 3-minute rounds, it hurts the sport right now. It'll probably be better and after the next Olympics. And I don't mean this year. I don't mean Tokyo. I mean the next Olympics. So until then, I think we should stick with 2-minute rounds for the overall growth of female boxing.
Brilliant. Do you think this is the reason why there's so many people who maybe like 4, 5 and 0 who've got to be fighting for world titles sooner than usual?
Of course it is. I mean, you tell me, other than Lomachenko, other than guys like that, like who fought for world titles under 12 fights. I mean, Jessica fought for a world title on her 6th, I think it was her 6th bout. We fought Katie. So it's like, where else? You don't see guys like, you guys are always fighting 18 to 20 times before they get a world title shot, maybe. So it's like, that's because the pool of fighters, there's so many. And I think like the girls are doing it quicker and faster. And I don't think the girls realize like what they're asking for. I really don't. Until they get knocked out, until they break their hand, until they can't find an opponent to fight, they're not going to understand what it's like. And all those girls who are complaining about that are either girls that are like journeymen who can't get a fight, or it's the you don't hear about the girls, like you don't hear about Katie Taylor complaining about 3-minute rounds. You don't hear about the marquee fighters complaining, except for maybe Clarissa Shields. But I don't think Clarissa understands how it would hurt the overall business landscape of female boxing.
You used one of your fighters as an example. I'm sure you was talking about Summer Lin.
Yes.
Is that correct? Yeah. Let's talk about Summer. She recently fought in Mexico, got a unanimous decision.
Yeah.
What's the plan for Summer for the remaining of the year? Is it to stay active, or can you see her being 50-50 fights?
You know what? She fights in Atlanta this weekend coming up. So we travel to Atlanta on Thursday. She fights in Atlanta. After this fight, it looks like I'm going to try to get her maybe a junior belt, maybe a junior IBO shot, and then after that, we'll see what happens. I mean, right now, as long as she keeps winning, and as long she's only 19, so I could take my time with her. But I'd say by the end of the year or early next year, we should be fighting for a world title shot.
Amazing. There's another one in your camp, Tiara Brown, 10-0. She hasn't fought since 2019. Could we see her return into the ring sometime soon?
Yeah, I'm Tiara and Jessica and all three of us had dinner. We flew her out to Chicago. Tiara Brown is a great person. She's got great energy. I think she's good for female boxing. She's a police officer in her daytime job, so she's just a good person. She's a really good fighter. So I think you could see us working together in the near future. I am trying to get her back in the market relatively soon, so you might hear about that in the next week or so. And we're just going to work together and see how it goes. I mean, I would love for Tiara Brown to have a world title shot by the end of the year as well. So that could definitely happen. That could happen easily on the undercard of possibly a Jessica McCaskill versus Katie Taylor too. So you could see her on the undercard. You could see Summer Lynn on the undercard. Might be able to see an all-female show. It just depends on what's happening and where the landscape of boxing is. And I kind of think, I know it might sound crazy, but it kind of depends on, what happens with Anthony Joshua and Fury or Jessic or whichever fights they go with. That kind of affects things too, because I think that determines on what show Katie and Jessica will fall on. Do they go independent? Do they go a co-main event to a big show like that? So I think putting Jessica and Katie on a big show like that, I think helps female boxing, puts it on a massive platform. And I hope the promoters are thinking that big, because I think Katie and Jessica too would be a huge draw as far as viewers and gate, people in the gate. I think it's a great fight.
We recently had Katie Taylor versus Natasha Jonas, and that was on the undercard of Chisora and against Joseph Parker. That got a lot of criticism because that should have been the main event. For me personally, as a boxing fan, it will be a tragedy for women's boxing and boxing if Katie and Jessica too was on the undercard. That should be a stadium fight, main event.
I agree and I don't agree. I agree because it is definitely it could just standalone fight for sure. But also, I would love for Jessica and Katie to be on the Anthony Joshua of Tyson Fury undercard, because I think there's going to be, first of all, the stadium would be 100,000 people, right? 65,000 to 100,000 people. So that's 65 to 100,000 people. How many of those people are naturally female boxing fans? Probably not many. So they're forced to watch that fight, whether they like it or not. And I think Katie and Jessica, that caliber of fight, could turn them on to female boxing. Also, on the viewership, on the zone, you get people who are going to each other's houses for parties to watch Joshua fight Tyson Fury. And the co-main event, everyone's always at somebody's house right by the co-main event. And someone who doesn't know anything about female boxing sees someone like Katie versus Jessica, two undisputed champions, fighting on the co-main event. I think that's good business. I think that's good business. Plus the fact that, you got to remember, on the business side of things, that's more viewers. That's more eyes on Jessica, more eyes on Katie, right? And on the money side, if that fight goes to Saudi Arabia, they're going to have a lot more money to spend on a fight like that, which means Jessica and Katie get more money. And that's what we want to be a part of. Jessica, I'm trying to get Jessica to be the first millionaire along with Katie. So it'd be two female fighters for fighting for $1 million plus, and it's never been done in boxing. And I would love to be the one to deliver that. And I think if Jessica fight Katie Taylor, I think they both make over $1 million, and I think that would be exciting for the young up and coming females in the game. And I don't think people think about the business side of things, and I think like DAZN would put up the capital to make that fight happen. I really, really do, and I think it should be on a massive co-main event to Anthony Joshua and Fury. I don't think it should be a co-main event to anything else other than that fight.
Yeah, I agree with you. I done an interview a couple months ago with Mark Taffert, who's Clarissa Shields' manager. Yeah. And he actually said that he'd love to make the Shields Marshall fight on the same undercard as Joshua Fury. So I echo what you mean. I mean, that would think about Anthony Joshua over here in the UK. You don't have to be a British boxing fan to watch Anthony Joshua. He just attacks the whole nation to his fights. So that will open up a whole world audience for you guys as well to fight on and bring new fans as well.
Absolutely. And that's more of the business. Like Mark obviously is a business guy. So is Eddie Hearn. So is Mark. So I think like those business guys get it. Like I think people who complain just don't understand the business side that much. And I think for those reasons, like female boxing is not improving as fast as it should.
What's your thoughts on Eddie Hearn? Right now, arguably probably the best promoter in the world right now. He's put on some great shows. What's it like? What was it like working with him in the zone for both fights with Jessica and Breakers?
I think when you have capital, when you have the financial capital, it's easy to be the best promoter in the world. It's easier to make fights. I think Eddie's got a lot on his plate. You know, I don't want to say he's difficult to work with at all. I think Eddie's easy to work with. It's just, I would say if there's any issue, I would say it's hard to get him on the phone. It's hard to pin him down. I know he's got a lot going on, but I think, you know, and this goes for any promoter. I think the big promoters got to remember, guys like me, Jessica McCaskill is my Anthony Joshua. She is my Canelo. So, you know, when the promoters give Canelo, Anthony Joshua, Wilder, like all the attention, it's frustrating for me because Jessica is, like I said, she's my Canelo, my Anthony Joshua, my Deontay Wilder. So she is my star pupil, obviously. And, you know, I just need more attention and more access to these bigger name promoters. But, you know, Eddie's doing a really good job with female boxing, and he's doing a great job with boxing as a whole. So, but again, it's easy to do that when you have $1 billion budget. So I think like that helps, you know, for sure.
Jessica, I want to ask you. I've asked a lot of my female guests this question. As women's boxing has grown compared to, let's say, the last 10 years, let's say, but there are still women out there with a lot of talent that are scared to walk into a gym. Don't know if they're embarrassed or they're scared of what the men may think. What's your message to them as someone they may look up to and to get into boxing itself?
You definitely have to take that first step. You gotta, you know, get yourself together, get your mind right, because if you can't take that first step and you're thinking about what people are going to think about you or thinking about comparing yourself to the men of the sport, you won't make it. You know, when I first moved to Chicago, I had already been boxing as an amateur, and I knew maybe 2 people in Chicago. And I was looking for a gym for about 9 months. And I'm talking about, I called people, I emailed people. If there was a gym on my jogging route, I would just walk in and, you know, talk to them. And I didn't really get a lot of love. And they kind of wanted to push me in a corner to hit a bag. And they would say things like, this is an MMA gym. And I just kept trying and kept talking to a lot of people. And I got a lot of no's. And then finally I got a yes from Rick in his gym. And he said, just come in, just show up. And so I did. And, you know, a lot of the boxing career is about not worrying what people say about you. Everybody's going to have their own opinion. Like I said earlier, you know, people, you know, they say I won't win, and then I win, and then I didn't win the right way, or I didn't do certain things during the fight. So if I let that bother me, I'd be a very angry person, or I wouldn't be in boxing, because it's all around you, and you have to just kind of zone that out. So you have to do the same thing from beginning to end, and they just have to, you know, muster up, you know, their strength and their boldness and just do it.
Brilliant. Rick, I want to ask you, the first time you met Jessica and, you know, you saw her train, you saw her first fight, some of what you thought, did you ever think you'll get to this stage undisputed?
You know, the first time I saw Jessica spar, actually, I think it was like maybe the first week, may have been second day, maybe the first week. I put her in there with like a girl who I thought was a little bit better than average. She had won the Golden Gloves, and Jessica like stopped her in like maybe, I don't know, first round, maybe. I think it was first round, maybe first minute and a half. So I was like, oh shit, this girl's like mean, you know? So then after that, I took her to fight the #1 girl in Chicago at the time. It was an amateur show that I was doing, and this girl was about to turn pro, and Jessica fought her. No one knew who Jessica was. I didn't even really know who Jessica was. She was just fighting for me. And Jessica like gave her what? Four standing 8 counts. Gave her 4 standing 8 counts, and that girl never turned professional. She like detoured her whole career, and she was literally, I think that was supposed to be her last amateur fight. And then she was going to turn pro. That girl never turned pro. Jessica just gave her a beating. And shout out to her. She's a good person. I just, that was the incident. That's what happened. But I did think we were going to get a world title shot. I just didn't know, like that the success level that we would get. But I always, considered myself and considered Jessica like serious about the sport. And I thought we were always going to be coming into this like at a world-class level. I didn't know we were going to win so many world titles, but I definitely believed that we belonged on a world-class level, or else, I wouldn't have asked for that Katie fight. But I think after the Katie fight, I was convinced for sure that I was doing some good stuff with Jessica. And I can feel that night when we left that Jessica was definitely a world-class fighter, because I'm like, man, if she could hurt Katie, rock Katie, then there's probably 25 other girls she can beat right now, tonight, right after that fight. So I knew that Jessica was a world-class fighter after that night. So that loss, in a lot of ways, we won a lot more than people think. That loss definitely put us in a winner's circle for other positions.
Jessica, we've seen world-class fighters take a loss and then just become better and better and, learn from that loss. For an example, young Canelo against Floyd. What did you learn from that loss and up until your career now at this point?
A lot of people, they ask me questions like, what would you change? And I think, I wouldn't change anything. And I feel like we learned so much about ourselves and our team and what we were doing and how much we have progressed, and, that we were on the right path. So, I think we learned a lot about ourselves and our program and how we train. And I think that was probably the most powerful point, because we were implementing a lot of new things, especially me as an athlete. Whatever they threw at me, I was like, okay, I'll do it. I was at the time I was living in an apartment on the 4th floor with no elevator. So there were times when I would leave training, working with one coach and then working with Rick, doing strength and conditioning and then doing boxing, where I would literally crawl up the steps because I had no legs left or I just didn't have any energy left. And I'm like, if they think this is what I need to be doing, then I'm going to do it. And I'm going to be the one person that can implement their plan. And so I just because of the way the fight went, and that being my first 10 rounder and my first, world title fight. And I felt like I did really well. So I think, that was just more motivation for me to continue with our programming and our planning, our training.
Brilliant.
Rick,
Yeah.
After Jessica's last fight, when she beat Rakers for the second time, she mentioned you as being the best trainer in the world. How did that make you feel, hearing those words?
It obviously makes me feel good, because that wasn't planned or rehearsed. So I obviously hearing your name shouted out on the biggest platform in boxing, from the number one female on the planet at 147, obviously is a great feeling. I think, me as a newer coach, like I've coached for 15 years, but obviously newer to this level, I, you think like, man, you start questioning yourself. Am I a world-class coach? Am I making the right decisions? I jumped on the Cecilia fight because I thought we could beat her. I was shocked that they offered us the fight. I like, the way I thought about it was like, if Cecilia beats us, I don't know anything about boxing, because I feel like the styles weren't right. I feel like Abel Sanchez was the wrong coach. I just felt like I was picking everything apart on their end, and I was making it public. And I think it just ate away at them, because I think they believed what I was saying. I mean, let me rephrase. I think they knew what I was saying was true. They just didn't want to believe it. And then once I would say it out loud and other people agreed, I think it just ate away at them. And, I think half the battle was won on the internet, and then the other half was won in the actual ring. But to answer your question, it felt amazing. I do feel like I'm probably one of the most underrated coaches in the game, but only time will tell, right?
100%. Who were some of the coaches that you looked up to growing up?
What's crazy? I don't think a lot of people know this. Actually, I don't think anyone knows this. I would go to – I opened up a boxing gym in like 2006, and I would travel to Oxnard, California, and I would spend a couple of days with Robert Garcia. I would spend a couple of days with his brother, Danny Garcia. I would spend a couple of days with Joseph Jenkins, Big Hoss from Oxnard. Then I would drive down to LA and spend like a day or two with Freddie Roach. I spent a month in Mexico City with Nacho Beristain. So like I was like, Robert Garcia, we had talked to Mikey Garcia after Jessica's fight in Dallas. And Mikey Garcia was like, holy shit, like that was you. Like you were there every week. I would go to Oxnard a week once a year for like 7 years. And I would spend time out there with those guys, and I would try to get a little bit from all those marquee trainers and try to create my own style. And when I brought it up to Mikey, Mikey was like, holy shit, that was you, but you never talked. You just sat there like for 3-4 days. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't want to speak, but like Robert and I remember Brandon Rios always welcomed me. Victor Ortiz always welcomed me. There was just a bunch of fighters and a bunch of guys on the West Coast. That's why, like, I think, you know, a lot of those guys, like you mentioned my name to those guys, and they're like, yeah, that Rick was around, like always. He was always around, and he was real quiet. Now he's not so quiet, but he's not so quiet anymore. But yeah, I think, you know, when I run into those guys, they're all like, yo, bro, it's fucking awesome to see you doing good, because like you were the guy in our gym who never spoke, who just kind of observed. And, you know, guys like I said, like Brandon Rios would always welcome me, and like other fighters too, Pelos Garcia, rest in peace. Like the Garcia family, Robert Garcia's family, like would all welcome me down there. Danny Garcia invited me to his house. All those guys, you know, it's just a bunch of good guys who from the West Coast who would always welcome me in their homes, in their gyms, to the fights. So Fernando Vargas is a good friend of mine too. I go to Vegas and hang out with him like for 3 years, like once a year. For a week for 3 years to hang out with Fernando. So those guys were all like really influential to me coming up. But I would watch Big G. I don't know if you know Big G, Robert Garcia's father. I would watch him. I'd watch Nacho Beristain. I would watch Abel Sanchez, to tell you the truth. Abel, I still respect Abel's work. I just think Abel was the wrong coach for Cecilia. I would work with Abel. I would work for Abel. I would work with Abel. I do respect Abel, but I would watch him. Obviously, Freddie Roach, Robert Garcia. There was like 4 or 5 trainers that I would always watch, for sure. No doubt about it.
So you was a silent assassin in training back then?
Yeah, I would just observe. I wanted a little bit of everything they were teaching and kind of make my own recipe, you know? And I think it's working.
Brilliant. What's your thoughts on this whole Anthony Joshua Fury situation?
You know, I think, you know, again, I'm no one, but, you know, I'll give you my opinion. I think, you know, Bob Arum knew exactly what was going on the whole time. And, you know, Eddie's kind of always rubbed Bob Arum the wrong way. I think Bob Arum's made that pretty public. And I think that was Bob Arum's way to stick it to Eddie. You know, and I think sometimes, you know, Eddie he's just like me. I get a little excited sometimes, and I run my mouth a little prematurely than I should. And I think Eddie does that too, because he's in the driver's seat to make a lot of those fights that he wants to happen. So I think Eddie spoke a little too soon, and I think it irritated Bob, and I think it's been irritating Bob. And I think Bob was like, all right, let me show Eddie who the real Hall of Fame promoter is. And I think that was Bob Arum's way of saying, hey, remember, you're new to this game, so I'm going to stick it to you because you need to learn. That's just my opinion. I could be dead wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong.
You could be right, because it's not just Bob Arum, it's Frank Warren as well. So
yeah, those old timers walk around, you know.
Old timers are messing. They're not playing around.
No, they're not.
So do you think it was all planned?
Yeah, I do. I mean, there's no way in the world that Bob Arum didn't know about. I mean, he knew about the arbitration. There's no way in the world that he didn't understand the risk. And on top of that, like, they had the stadium booked already. They had the stadium booked already for the Tyson Wilder 3 fight. So it's like, I mean, you don't do that unless you understand your risk. So I think Bob Arum understood his risk, didn't talk about it publicly, or didn't mention it to Eddie, and that was his way of saying, well, you know what, you're out, and for now, and we'll see what happens. We'll see how it all plays out.
I want to talk to you a bit about the Haney and Linares fight on the weekend. What did you make of that fight?
I actually was rooting for Linares. I felt like he was the better fighter. Didn't look like he was a better fighter that night. Devin Haney surprised me early. I think he stuck to the game plan. I do believe that he's going to be a good fighter. I just don't know how.
You got to remember, Bob Arum is a lawyer as well. People forget that.
Yeah, exactly. He is, for sure. But I do think Devin Haney. I don't know. I think Devin Haney is going to be good. I think you know, he stuck to his game plan so good that, you know, it was easy for him to beat Linares. But, you know, towards the end, he started like coming off the game plan just a little bit. And I think Linares reminded him like, yo, I'm still a veteran. I'm still dangerous all 12 rounds. And, you know, luckily he got through it. But it was a good fight.
Yeah, brilliant. Nando, you got anything you want to say? I think the sound's gone there.
Yeah, I can't hear him.
Yeah. Nando, you still there?
Seems like it sounds off.
Yeah. Okay, I want to ask you both, what's your short-term and long-term goal in boxing going forward from here?
Yeah. I mean, long term, I guess there's a little bit of a list, you know, making sure that I get in the Hall of Fame, making sure I've changed history, which, you know, we've already done a lot of that now, but I wanted to continue that throughout the rest of my career, get a crossover fight, get the Katie Taylor 2. I mean, after that, there's not really a lot of people out there without reaching or without kind of taking a couple steps down. So I leave that up to Rick as far as fighting and finding someone to fight, because he always makes something up really creative, which is fine. And then, you know, short term is just to be consistent and to be a role model, to stay in the gym, to always be ready. You never know when you're going to get a phone call for something. You know, a lot of things in our career have been kind of like last minute changes. You know, we weren't supposed to fight Erica Farias. That wasn't supposed to be a WBC fight. That wasn't even supposed to be a 140-pound fight. And all of that changed like literally within a blink of an eye. And we were ready and we were confident. So we said yes to all of that. So I know how important it is to stay ready and to be very alert of your surroundings. So that's kind of the short-term goal, is just to stay in shape, to stay ready, to push the envelope with my training, and to be a role model.
And Rick?
You know, I think the short-term goal is to get the Katie fight, to secure Jessica's position in the Hall of Fame. And I think like the ultimate, you know, long-term goal is just to have more world champions, to be a recognized voice in boxing, and to get myself in the Hall of Fame. I think to get everyone underneath me in the Hall of Fame so they can pull me in when it's my turn. You know what I mean? I would like those votes when it's my turn. Ultimately, I'm not here just to make a couple bucks. I'm here to be in the history books of boxing, and I think people need to realize that and hopefully respect it. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I love that. The fact that you both want to leave a legacy behind is what it's all about, really. That's what it's all about in terms of being in this game. We want to be mentioned in years to come as being an all-time great. So I love the fact that you both want to leave a legacy behind in the sport.
For sure. Definitely in Chicago and in the nation, and hopefully in the history books, you know, to be compared with some of the best. Hopefully someday you interview somebody and they're like, yo, I want to be like Rick Ramos, you know, and other female fighters want to be like Jessica. I mean, that's what it's all about, you know.
100%. Jessica, Rick, I want to thank you for taking the time to join me on the P4P Boxing Show, and I wish you nothing but best. I'm looking forward to the fight news soon and seeing you both back in the ring soon.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us. We'll come on anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. God bless. Take care now.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.